God bless everyone. Today, I bring you the chilling testimony of Stephen Pleasant, a man whose life was forever transformed by a harrowing journey into the afterlife. In this unforgettable experience, Stephen encountered terrifying truths that shook him to his core, including the shocking sight of someone he never imagined would be in such a place. What he saw and learned in that realm revealed the weight of his sin and the chains of anger and prejudice he carried for decades. Now, I will read his letter just as he wrote it, as we uncover the sin that led him there and the path of Jesus that ultimately set him free. My name is Stephen Pleasant, and I am a 77-year-old man from Memphis, Tennessee. My life has been a journey shaped by shadows I didn't even realize were there until recently. At the age of 14, I experienced a moment that carved itself into my soul. I was accused of a crime I didn't commit, a bottle of soda of all things, and the humiliation and pain I felt that day twisted into a vow. I promised myself that no one would ever treat me that way again. But what I didn't understand then was that anger, once planted, grows like a weed. Over the years, that seed of resentment spread through my heart, convincing me I was protecting myself, my dignity, and even my people. But anger blinds you. It makes you believe you're standing tall when you're just sinking deeper into a pit. As a teacher, my classroom became a place where I could wield control, but even there, that anger took its toll. I kept my distance from some of my students, not because of their actions, but because of their skin. I justified my coldness, thinking I was setting boundaries, but I was really building walls. Even in my own family, my resentment seeped through. When my daughter fell in love with a young man who didn't share our color, I let that anger speak for me instead of my love for her. I opposed her happiness, thinking I was standing for something greater, when in truth, I was only standing against myself. Little did I know, these choices and feelings were forging invisible chains around my soul. What I didn't realize was that life has a way of revealing the truth, sometimes in ways you'd never expect. And on one fateful day, I would come face to face with those chains and the path that brought me to them. It was a warm evening on June 12, 2024, when I set out for my usual walk at Shelby Farms Park, a routine that had always brought me a sense of peace. The paths were familiar, the air serene, and I felt the comforting rhythm of my footsteps as I wandered through the trees. But that night, something felt different. I noticed faint rustling behind me, subtle but heavy, like footsteps attempting to mask their presence. I slowed down, glancing back, but the path appeared empty. Before I could take another step, an explosion of pain erupted at the back of my head, and I was thrown to the ground. My vision blurred as I hit the dirt, my head pounding like a drum. Darkness crept in quickly, swallowing everything around me. As my body grew heavy, one thought pierced through the chaos in my mind. Is this it? Is this how it all ends? When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the park anymore. I wasn't anywhere familiar. I was surrounded by a darkness unlike anything I'd ever known. Deep, suffocating, and alive. It clung to me, stripping away every sense of comfort or safety. I raised my hand to my face, but I couldn't see it, as if the very air had consumed even the light. Then, the sounds began. Eerie whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Soft moans rising and falling like waves, and something breathing close enough to feel its presence, but invisible to my eyes. My pulse raced, and I began walking, though I couldn't tell if I was on solid ground or floating in empty space. That's when I saw them. Shadows emerged from the void, their red eyes glowing like embers in the night. As my eyes adjusted, the shadows took shape, grotesque creatures with bat-like wings, clawed hands, and gnarled, twisted faces. One stepped closer, its grin widening to reveal sharp, blood-stained teeth. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet were frozen in place. I could feel my heart pounding, my breath shallow and rapid. This wasn't just fear. This was something far worse, and somewhere deep inside, I realized I wasn't dreaming. I was somewhere real, somewhere I didn't belong, but the horrors of this place were just beginning to reveal themselves. As I stumbled forward through the suffocating darkness, the whispers grew louder, and the air thickened with heat that clawed at my skin. Suddenly, I found myself standing at the edge of a churning river, not of water, but of bubbling green acid. The acrid smell seared my nostrils, and screams filled the air, each one sharper and more desperate than the last. I saw people trapped in the current, their bodies dissolving, their faces twisted in agony. They reached out with melting hands, their hollow eyes pleading for help. My stomach churned as I realized one of those faces was familiar. A former student of mine. He had been quiet in my classroom, sitting in the front row every day, yet I had kept my distance from him simply because he was white. Now here he was, submerged in torment, his blistered lips moving as he struggled to speak. When he finally managed to form the words, his voice was like gravel. "You will come too." My knees buckled, and I felt a wave of dread consume me. This wasn't just a place of punishment, it was a mirror. I kept moving, but the horrors of this realm seemed to follow me. That's when I saw him, chained and writhing on the ground. His face was unmistakable. Andrew Jackson, the president whose portrait had loomed over every history classroom. His pale skin was covered in black scars. His back bore the fresh lash marks of a whip, and black liquid oozed from his wounds. He met my gaze with wild desperation, shouting, "Get me out of here! I'm a president!" But a towering demon stepped forward, its whip cracking through the suffocating air. The creature hissed, "There is no presidency here!" The whip struck, and Jackson's screams pierced my soul. I turned away, trying to block out the sight and sound, but I couldn't escape the truth this place was forcing me to see. These people were here for their sins, and then, like a flood, the memories came, my anger, my prejudice, the cold judgment I had cast on others. My daughter's tears as I rejected her love for a man simply because of the color of his skin. I realized then that my so-called justice had been nothing more than hatred in disguise. My soul felt heavier with each step as I asked myself the one question I dreaded most. If this is their fate, then what about mine? As I ventured deeper into this unholy realm, the chaos around me intensified. The air grew thicker, hotter, as if the very atmosphere was alive with malice. My skin burned with every step, and the acrid stench of sulfur and decay filled my lungs, making it almost impossible to breathe. The landscape before me was a nightmare, a vast, fiery expanse where rivers of molten lava cut through jagged, blackened earth. The screams of the tormented echoed endlessly, each one more gut-wrenching than the last, as if the very fabric of this place was woven from suffering. In the distance, I saw a stage illuminated by eerie, flickering lights, and there, performing grotesquely, was Michael Jackson. His skeletal form moved mechanically, his once iconic dance now a horrifying display of decay. The crowd, twisted figures writhing in agony, screamed not with excitement, but with sheer despair. Every detail of this place seemed designed to overwhelm and break the spirit. But I couldn't stop moving. Something unseen was pulling me forward, deeper into this nightmare. And as I pressed on, I couldn't help but wonder, what more could this hell possibly hold for me? As I trudged forward, exhausted and broken, the oppressive darkness around me began to shift. From the void emerged a faint glow, growing brighter with each step. It wasn't the menacing crimson light I had seen before, but a pure, radiant brilliance that seemed to push back the suffocating despair. Then I saw him, a figure dressed in white, his arms open wide, radiating a peace so profound it brought me to my knees. His face, though indescribable in human terms, was familiar, as if I had always known him. This was Jesus. Tears streamed down my face as he approached, his gaze piercing through the depths of my soul. As long as you hold on to hatred and prejudice, he said softly, your soul will remain chained. In that moment, I looked down and saw the heavy chains wrapped around me, forged by my own anger, my own judgments. Each link represented a moment of resentment, a word of condemnation, a choice to turn away from love. I cried out, begging for forgiveness, and with a touch of his hand, the chains shattered and fell away. The weight I had carried for decades was gone, replaced by a warmth that filled every corner of my being. When I opened my eyes again, the light was different. Harsh, yet comforting, it came from the bright fluorescent bulbs of an ambulance. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, my lungs burning with the sudden rush of oxygen. I could hear the muffled voices of paramedics, one saying, "We got him back." I was alive, but I wasn't the same. The chains I had felt in that otherworldly place were gone, yet their memory was seared into me. Every breath I took felt like a second chance, and I knew I could no longer be the man I had been. That experience wasn't a dream or a hallucination. It was a reckoning, a wake-up call that forced me to confront the truth about myself. My anger, my prejudice, my so-called righteousness. They had bound me as tightly as any chains. And yet, I had been given mercy. I had been freed. The first test of that transformation came when my daughter, Rachel, walked into my hospital room, her fiancé by her side. He was white, the same man I had once rejected and judged. But now I saw something else. His hand gently holding hers, his eyes filled with love and care. Rachel's happiness shone brighter than any light I had seen in that hellish place, and for the first time, I truly saw her joy for what it was, a gift. "If he makes you happy, then he's family," I told her, my voice trembling with emotion. Tears filled her eyes, and in that moment, I felt a chain within me break that I hadn't even realized was still there. From then on, I dedicated my life to living in faith, spreading the message of forgiveness and love that had saved me. But what I saw in that place, the faces, the torment, the truths revealed, would stay with me forever. And even now I wonder, was that truly the end of my chains? Or is there still more to confront on this journey? Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. May God protect each of you and guide you toward the light, no matter where you are on your journey. Remember, the path of Jesus is one of boundless love and forgiveness, a path that frees us from the chains of anger and prejudice that can weigh down our souls. Don't let those chains bind you. If this message touched you, please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this resonates with you, and together, let's spread the light and truth of redemption.